the first time you show up to a set to be a part of an adult film, how old were you?
Yeah.
What was it like? What were you thinking?
I get there, it's a legitimate set. There's catering, there's girls in the, there's makeup chairs lined up. There's girls, getting their makeup done. And I'm going there and it's like, all of a sudden, I'm nervous. I'm like, man. And then I look over here to my right, and there's like a sea of lights. Like back then, it's like the Kino flows, like the big, the big, almost like candid, lights.
Yeah.
And it's just like a sea of lights around her. And they're like, that's who you're filming with. And I never talked to her, never had a conversation with her, never shook her hand, didn't know anything about her. I didn't even know her. I knew her real name, but I didn't even know her stage name, because when you sign your paperwork, you say, okay, here's a full panel STD test and AIDS test, and here's her ID. Like, do the names match? Is everything clear? Okay. And I signed that I saw it. And then I go, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, hey, here's Viagra. If you've never taken one, I'd bite it in half, up to you, but we need you in 30 minutes. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do,
So you made over 1,000 of these movies, became a pretty prolific porn actor, award-winning, the whole 9 yards. What was there a season where you got lost in it, where you enjoyed the life a little bit? Like it was, or did you always have a part of you that felt this isn't right? Like, what was that like?
I mean, I think that
Lights on with my friend Josh Broome. It's such an honor to have you, bro.
Man,
the first thing that strikes me about you is how bright your smile is.
Hey, I appreciate that, bro.
My gosh. We talked for a while offline, and I'm really glad we could make this work.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped.
And so for those who are just checking it out, welcome to Lights On. Always an honor and a pleasure to have you. Josh is a mover and a shaker. I love asking people this question.
Okay.
But how do you define yourself? Because I've been around a lot of other people who they'll give you an intro or tell you who they think you are, and I'm always curious, how do you define yourself?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah, man. The most favorite thing about me is that I identified myself, and I probably would have said I was my mother's son, was the way that I grew up, and it was because I didn't have a father. So I would say the way that I identify myself today is, man, I know who my father is.
Wow.
So that, husband. I love being a dad. It's the most fun thing in the world. And
reel off your start your roster right now.
Yeah. So got 6, 4, 3, and 1, all boys. Me and my wife Hope, and it's wild, man. It's wild. We're living in Dallas and traveling pretty much every week, speaking somewhere or doing something, and it's been wild. It's been a while because everything that I'm doing today is everything I thought I would never do. So
yeah, I love it. I think to give people the quickest recap of some of the things about you, you're a dad, you're an author. You are a speaker, a great speaker, I might add. So I've seen some of the stuff you've done. A friend to many, and there has been a chapter of your life where you have used to bring a lot of light to something really dark.
Oh yeah,
and
man.
When people say the adult film industry, Russell Brand made a great point recently when he said, how funny is it that we have now equated things that are of a sexual exploitive nature with adult entertainment.
Oh yeah.
But you had a chapter of your life where that was a big part of it, and I've enjoyed watching you use that to stand on it and bring light to it. So tell me about the first time you show up to a set to be a part of an adult film. How old were you?
Yeah.
What was it like? What were you thinking?
Yeah, it was wild because kind of what led up to it was, I had a theater background. I was acting and modeling since I was like 12, 13 years old.
Where was this, Cali?
Well, I was living in, so I grew up in South Carolina, so I was like in Charlotte and, doing like Belk, JCPenney, like all the deal. And then as I got older, I did Fashion Week a few times. So I had a legitimate agent. So I was LA models represented me. I was with Click for modeling. So I was doing, okay. Move out to LA to do that, and then I'm out there grinding, going to auditions, and it's funny because I wanted to act, and that was going okay. Modeling was going better, so I was kind of frustrated that the thing that I wanted to do, I wasn't doing as much as I wanted to, and I wasn't putting a lot of effort towards modeling, but that was going really well. But things were good. And then I was at Saddle Ranch in LA, and a girl rolled up to me and said, "Hey, would you ever consider being in a porn?" And I was like, I don't know. I mean, what kind of question is that? And she was like, "Well, I'd love to introduce you to my agent." And it's funny that you talk about language, where it's like, man, I say from stage off, and we got to call, like, not adult film industry. You got to call it pornography. Pornography comes from the Greek New Testament, like porneia.
Right.
Like it's biblically accurate.
There's a word.
Yeah, and I think, like, when we don't call things what they are, we distance ourselves from them in the wrong way. So yeah, like, this girl's like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I was like, "I don't know." And then she said agent and meeting and boardroom and all this stuff. So I was like, "Man, how bad could it be?" And I go and I say yes to this because I meet with this agent, and he's like, "I'll make you famous. I'll make you rich. You'll be that guy."
How old were you at this time?
22.
22.
But it was so funny because he was like, "I'll make you famous." And then and after I said, "Okay, I'll do one," the next thing he said was, "Okay, well, what stage name do you want to go by?" And I think there's something that really needs to be said about when you dissociate yourself from who you are, you'll do things that you will never do. Like, you look at social media, like any kind of person that's an antagonist in the comments, more often than not, they've got a fictitious name and a meme for a face, because if I can distance myself from who I am, I'm not held accountable to what I do. But yeah, so I say yes, and I show up on set. And it's like this moment, like, I feel like I'm a high schooler at a party, and I want to go home because they, like, strategically, I get picked up in a town car. I don't know the address that I'm going to. I get there, and then I get there, and it's like, just sign this paperwork. And I'm thinking, like, this is how you get paid, sign this paperwork. Right. But what I'm actually signing is, hey, you're giving all rights to video, audio, any kind of imagery. Everything. Like, you're an independent contractor. You're getting paid a day rate. You're not going to get 1 cent of royalty. Once everything is captured on this set is not you, and it's going to be sold to as many third parties as we want. They don't say that, hey, this is how you get paid. So I sign all the stuff thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to get paid. And in my head, I mean, this is like 2006, so I'm thinking I'm going to get a camcorder, go in a room with a girl and do whatever, and then get a check.
Right.
I get there, it's a legitimate set. There's catering, there's girls in the, and there's makeup chairs lined up. There's girls, getting their makeup done. And I'm going there, and it's like, all of a sudden, I'm nervous. I'm like, man. And then I look over here to my right, and there's like a sea of lights. Like, back then, it's like the Kino flows, like the big, like, the big, like, almost like tanning bed, lights. Yeah. And it's just like a sea of lights around her. And they're like, that's who you're filming with. And I never talked to her, never had a conversation with her, never shook her hand, didn't know anything about her. I didn't even know her. I knew her real name, but I didn't even know her stage name, because when you sign your paperwork, you say, okay, here's a full panel STD test and AIDS test, and here's her ID. Like, do the names match? Is everything clear? Okay. And I signed that I saw it. And then I go, and this guy comes up to me, and he's like, hey, here's Viagra. If you've never taken one, I'd bite it in half, up to you, but we need you in 30 minutes. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? And then I start thinking, like, man, what if I wanted to bounce? I'm like, well, number one, again, 2006, like, Uber doesn't exist,
No.
So, like, how am I can't even call a cab. I don't even know where I'm at. I'm in this, like, studio where there's, like, 15 sets in this big studio I was in Encino. And I was like, man, I don't know what to do. And it's like, and then if I call the agent, it's like, I want to go home. Like, what am I going to say? And I didn't know what to do. And I go to the bathroom. I'm like, looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, how did I get here? What am I going to do? And I'm like, I didn't know what else to do. So it's almost like I convinced myself that there was no way out. So, like, with me, either I'm going to do something, or it's like, either I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to go 110%. So it's like, all right, so the whole Viagra, chug the water, like, okay, let's do it. And then I walk into the sea of lights, and it was like so detached. I mean, like, literally, it's so mechanical in that the director is telling you what to do, and it's not pleasure between two people, it's performance for a camera. Where it's like, it's all about angles. What can I see? Not how does it feel, There's no eye contact, and any perceivable eye contact, again, this is back in the day. So like gigantic camera, like literally laying on my shoulder, camera on my body, and the girl's looking at the camera pretending that she's looking at me. So the viewer thinks that they're looking at me or looking at them, but she's looking at no one. And she's a million miles off, so there's like me using Viagra, she's using numbing cream. It's like just like the most unsexy thing you could possibly imagine. Then I remember, bro, have you seen Redeeming Love? So, I mean, it's a Christian movie, but ultimately, like, this girl, she's working at a brothel. She meets this guy. They fall in love. And then she goes back. And it's like she got comfortable, and comfortable felt chaotic because she'd never experienced comfortable.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that 1,000%. And she was like, I didn't know what to do but run back to the chaos. And she went back and she, worked at a brothel for a few times. And then she felt terrible and she left. And man, I don't know why this always makes me emotional, but she's in this river. I got chill bumps. She's in this river and she's got a rock, and she's trying to scrub how she feels off her body, and what's on her body, it's not on the surface, so she can't scrub it off.
Yeah, wow.
And that's the shower that I took after that. It's like, man, like the lube and stuff that was on the hair of my legs, I couldn't get it off, but like just the way that I felt, I couldn't get it off. And I was like, I'm never going to do that again. Yet I did it over 1,000 times.
So you made over 1,000 of these movies, became a pretty prolific porn actor, award-winning, the whole 9 yards. What was there a season where you got lost in it, where you enjoyed the life a little bit, like it was, or did you always have a part of you that felt this isn't right? Like what was that like?
I mean, I think that like in the beginning, like, sure. I mean, I grew up like food stamps, and like if I got a pair of J's, they were used, but I cherished them like they were, you know. But once I started making like real good money, and all of a sudden it gave me access and notoriety. And I remember, the first year I was in the industry, I got nominated for like best male newcomer or whatever. And I was at the Venetian, and I'm walking through there, and like people are recognizing me and like want to take pictures with me, and I'm signing like, this ages myself, like signing VHS tapes, and DVDs. But just being in that spot, it was like, man, I wanted to be proud of it until someone asked me what I did. Like I like the idea of being famous, but I didn't like what I was famous for. So I mean, it was fun having access to being paid to sit in the VIP section at clubs in Vegas, and being able to get into wherever I wanted in LA and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, man. I'd lay my head down on a pillow, and I was wrestling with, man, I'm not creating nothing. I'm not contributing to anything. And like the worst thing for me, man, it was like when my mom found out. It was like, being from a small town, it only takes one person to know one thing about your life, for everybody to know everything about your life. I
relate.
And my uncle found out at work, and then like, someone told him, and then he told my mom, and my mom asking me like, you're from the South, like you get it. I grew up in South Carolina. How much of my name was used is how contingent of how much trouble I was in. So like when she heard, I heard Joshua Luke, I was like, oh, it's on. She's like, did you do this? And I was like, I did, Mom. And Mom had me, got pregnant with me at 15, had me at 16. Like it was just me and her. Like I remember like throwing cans of green beans at dudes, like trying to heal my mom, like get away from my mom. Like, I wasn't sure about anything, but I was my mother's son. It's the thing I was most proud of. Took like such good care of me, protected me from everything. And when I said that I did that, I heard the hurt in her voice. And man, it was I already believed that I wasn't worth anything, because my dad being in the small town, like literally my mom worked at a restaurant that was across the street from a convenience store that was called Rogers. Rogers is my grandpa, and I would see both of them go in that store, but I didn't have access to him. So I knew who he was, but he was never in my life. And that made me believe man, there must be something wrong with me. And then when that happened, like when my mom said, man, like, you're better than that.
Yeah.
Satan was like, see, you're exactly who you thought you were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course you're doing bad things because you're bad, you know? So then from there, like from that point, like once my mom found out, I just doubled down. I was like, I'm going to get rich. I'm going to be the best and the biggest porn star in the world. And it's almost like, you know, I did all these things. And then, you know, 6 years into it, I'd been nominated for Performer of the Year 4 times, won a bunch of awards, made a bunch of money, like I had the spot, I had the Breitling, you know, the Bentley by Breitling, like, you know, I had all the stuff.
The hubcap on your wrist.
Yeah, had all the stuff. And then when I won Performer of the Year in 2012, when I found out that I won and it didn't make me feel like I thought it did, man, I was like, man, if this isn't going to fix me, nothing will. And at the same time, dude, like, I'm having sex with people who are dying of HIV. Like, every roommate I've ever had except one dead. Now, either they, like, fell off a balcony, like in Cabo, or died of HIV, or put themselves in harm's way, or suicide, overdose. Like, to this day, over 40 people, that's their story. Like, that, far more than that, like, in the industry, where there's people like I know. Like, I knew their real name, where they really were from. Like, we broke bread together. We spent time together. 40 people dead.
You're not here.
Yeah.
40 people.
Yeah.
That you personally have known. When you, first of all, it's so cool to be around other miracles walking.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many attempts on your life that you should be sitting here with a radiant smile. So I just acknowledge the courage that it takes to not just, you know, own and step up, but to use it. It's not easy, man. I relate to some degree of sharing pain, and the way you do it, man, it's changing lives. I think when you go walk back, so your mom's 15, she has you.
Yeah.
Dad's not around. Was there a moment like where your sexual brokenness, because I had to trace back a lot of my brokenness to where I really collided with pornography.
Yeah.
And it's under talked about, but that imprint is a big deal. And I had phenomenal parents. Yeah. Like, my parents were amazing. And how I collided with pornography was, it's just humanity. There's nothing that they could have done about it. You know, and I remember the first glimpse of something that was illicit. And I just remember what it felt like as a little guy. Yeah. And most of us have a story like that. Is there a link in your trail?
Oh, yeah.
How old were you when you were exposed to that?
So there was a time where it was wild. So there was, my mom was with a guy for a while. And I remember I was like 9 or 10 years old, and he was hitting her. And I was trying to get into that room, and I was like pressing against the door, and there was a dresser pressed against the door, and I could just get it cracked open. And it was weird because they were fighting and they were naked, and he was hitting her, and I was just like so confused by that. And it's so emotionally, I like suppressed that. And I just felt like so guilty for not being able to help my mom. And the next day I'm at my cousin's house, and he's like, hey, I want to show you something. And it was a magazine, and it was a bunch of like, I think I maybe had seen like a Playboy or something like that, but like this was a Hustler, so it was like more hardcore. Yeah. And he's like, well, I got these VHS tapes, and then he showed me that, and I remember like what was going on inside of me. It was like the duality of like, I want to look away, but I'm so curious that I can't.
Something's drawing me, yeah.
Yeah, and then just like this awakening of, man, you know, I'd like even my grandparents, like they slept in separate rooms, never saw my mom in a healthy relationship ever. So a depiction of intimacy I was unfamiliar with. So I thought, man, maybe if I dabble in some of that, I'll feel something I don't. And then, I mean, pretty much right away, I'm like trying to hook up with girls. And like that was my new drug from, this is like 12, 13 years old. Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, that was like really a catalyst for an awakening of, man, maybe if I have that, I'll feel something that I don't.
Right. You take me back to the industry. You're in it. What's a relationship like for a porn star? Like, cause I there's an element of, and we'll get to how culture handles porn.
Yeah.
Where there's still people who are like, that's an awesome life. And I know in different spheres of life behind the curtain, it's never what people think it is. But when you see two porn stars dating, you're like, oh, they must have sex all day long.
Yeah.
Or like, how does that, like in my mind, so you're dating, because you had a couple relationships while you were in the industry.
Yeah.
What's that like? Do you even have sex? Does it even like, what does that do?
I mean, for the most part, it was like, even if you did, you'd like, well, I can't climax because I gotta keep it or whatever. But what the craziest part about it was, you're the people who are willing to get close enough to you that maybe even you call them an associate or a friend.
Right.
More often than not, it's gonna be other people in that industry.
Yeah.
So I just remember we were at the Sherman Oaks Galleria and we were at Cheesecake Factory at just hanging out, and it was me and the girl that I was dating, and it was someone in the industry and someone he was dating. I had sex with his girlfriend that day, and he had sex with my girlfriend 2 days ago. But we're both sitting there saying we're in a monogamous relationship.
You're acting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say even more so, you're suppressing reality.
Yeah, but I'm saying the rationale is, we're just acting.
Well, it's just work.
It's hard to land that plane. I've obviously have friends that are actors in the non-porn industry, and that's always a dicey, slippery slope because it's like, what do you mean? It's a tough. Everyone has to land that on their own, but that must be another world sitting there across from someone who's physically been with the person a year. Yeah,
and it's like the person I was dating, like we were relatively serious. We dated for a while, and she was very popular, very well known, and it was just weird, just like thinking we're saying we're in a monogamous relationship, but knowing that, and then but she was actually into that, and it's weird how like the way that compromise works. It's like if you compromise a little, you're gonna compromise a lot.
Yeah.
And she was like, she wanted to talk about work, at home, and like when she would do that, she like, I want to like, and it was like either I could say, hey, I'm not about that. I don't want to do that. And I don't know if I ever talked about this before, but I was like, I don't want to do that. And I was saying that in my head, but then I was like, man, am I going to be he's almost like this chauvinistic, the way that men's, like when you don't understand what it means to be a man and you superimpose the idea of what it means to be a man and you try to pretend like you know what you're talking about. So you pretend like you're okay when you're not.
Yeah.
It was like, well, I feel like I have to say yes, because if she's asking me that, like, am I going to be perceived as weak if I don't say okay? So I allowed that into our relationship. And then the next thing was like, there was supposed to be a scene where it was like me, another guy, and her. And she was like, are you okay with this? And I said, sure, it's just work. And then we got on set, and it started to happen. And I was just like, and I mean, that like, it messed me up. And like, there were multiple times where I tried to harm myself, but like, that was the first time.
You said something about compromise. And what I found about compromise, you said if you do a little, it's going to be a lot. I would even go as far to say, in my experience, there is no such thing as little compromise.
Sure.
It's like, it's the equivalent of if a door is locked and you unlock it, even though you haven't opened it, that thing has free reign to open. Yeah. And that's how I saw compromise work in my life. So it wasn't like I'm just going to compromise a little bit. What you don't understand is you're just unlocking the door.
Yeah.
So it's either a yes or a no.
Right.
And so if you're playing with stuff like that, just know you're no longer playing. The game is on now.
Yeah, and I would say what you just said, like the way that it parallels in the porn industry, because like you have a no list, and your no list is things that I'm not willing to do, but if you have management,
you're already here.
Well, also, but like the way that management works, that it's like, man, your no, well, that's just an investment, because if you say no long enough, the thing that you will say yes to is now more valuable. Mm-hmm. So, and then it's like, well, if my value is tied to me selling myself for sex, well, at the same time, society and the people around me is saying, well, the only thing you can do is sell yourself for sex, because you can't do X, Y, and Z because you disqualified yourself from everything else. Yeah. So what happens is your no loses its validity, and the only thing that you can do is say yes. So you can't say no to anything, so you just say yes to everything. The way that you handle the porn industry now, I really appreciate, because I feel like you're not better than, you don't look at people with judgment. You actually have
you have a platform of grace that I always shared, as far as I had the advantage as a preacher of not always being a Christian. So I always looked at people who didn't believe what I believe in a different way. And
Sure.
and I feel like when you see the porn industry, you don't look at these people as like the way that you approach it with grace. I appreciate. There's good people in this industry.
Yeah.
There's good people that haven't had the revelation that you've had or the opportunity for breakthrough. And what's that side of it like? Did you find inside that community they're just being amazing people? And did you ever find yourself looking around going like, ugh, like this isn't like, what was the day? Maybe this is a better way to ask it. The day that you went, I can't do this anymore. What was that? What happened on that day?
Yeah. So to answer your question in its completeness, but I'll back up a little bit and say, man, there's people in the industry today that are still in the industry that I love and respect tremendously. Like love them, would do anything for them. So at the same time, it's like there's been times where I've had to have really tough conversations where it's like, man, what do I think about pornography? I think it's terrible. I think the industry in itself is vile and it's destructive to society and it harms kids and helpless people. And, it contributes to a lot of things, but I love you.
Yeah.
I love you. Like that does not mean that
it's beautiful.
Like I disagree. And like sometimes the argument is, man, oh, don't you see the life that I have? I'll say, man, like for example, there's a guy, I won't share his name, but there's a guy who's top tier and he's been in the industry for 15 years and he's a millionaire. He's got a bunch of stuff. But that dude is so smart and so charismatic and so gifted at everything he does. Man, I was like, man, you are a fool if you believe this is your best. Man, there's so much more you could be doing and you would be more wealthy and more successful. And that's the reality. Like anyone that's operating at the top tier in that industry, there's a charisma and a giftedness to you that you haven't even tapped in. You haven't even tapped into your potential. So like, that's my argument. Say, if you're saying, hey man, look at the life that I have today. I'm like, okay, but that's because there's something in you that allows you that. It's not because of what you're doing, because you are worth more than the way you're living.
What was the day like where you show up? And the reason why I'm asking you this, because I have a distinct day in college where I was invited to a party and I walked in and I could feel right away this was different. I heard some rumors about what was going to go on, and there was a couple particular women invited over, and I saw stuff start to take place. And I was in the darkest spot of my life, but I'm at a really high peak as well. Like I'm at the college that I never thought I could be at. I'm playing basketball. I loved it. It was awesome. Yeah. But I could just feel this tension of like and a situation started to unravel. I remember distinctly feeling, if I stay, I don't know if I'll ever come back from this. Yeah. I don't know if I can partake in this. Yeah. And by the grace of God, I left. Yeah. And that began my heart reopening to, I think it was a week later, I went home and encountered Jesus again in a fresh way. But I had a moment like that where I'm like, this can't be me. Yeah. You've been in the industry, you're making movies, and then there's a day where something shifted in you. Was it immediate, or was there like did you know it was coming? You're like, I gotta get off this train, or was it like a no?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually a series of events. So the first thing that happened is I'd filmed this for HBO movie, and it was regular film. And, we were in Costa Rica. We were filming for a few months. Incredible project. Poured my heart into it. Loved doing it. It was risque, but it wasn't porn. Yeah. And I remember like towards the end, we were looking at like the credits, and I don't know how I missed this, but we were looking at like credits at the end, and it was my stage name. And I was like, "What? Why not use Joshua Broome?" They were like, "No one knows who that is." AKA. That person's not valuable. So I was like, man. And I was just like, I was so excited about that. But then I was like so bummed about that. And then, I don't know if I ever shared about this either. But I said yes to, because like everyone in the industry, it's like, once you say yes, it just,
it's a wrap.
But I said yes to, I was bartending a party in Paris for the owners of a fashion industry.
Yeah.
And essentially I'm bartending shirtless, you know, whatever. And I was getting paid like 10 grand a day. I was out there. And, I mean, long story short, I got drugged and I got raped by a couple of dudes. And then I wanted to die. And then I started making decisions of, man, how can I blow my life up to the extent where I can convince myself that maybe if I hate myself enough, I can do it. And every time I tried, I just couldn't do it. And I was on set one day and just kind of, you know, after everything was over, I was just like looking at myself in the mirror and just like, again, like it was so interesting. The first and the last time I felt like lube on the hair of my legs. And it's like, it reminded me of the first time, you know, and it had been almost 7 years. And I was just like, today's the day. I was coming back from Atlanta and I was like, I know where I can get some pain pills. I know how many I need to take. And I was going to do it. And I'm going to walk into a bank and I had a check. In the check, it was the director. So the director gets paid like a lump sum from the production company, makes the movie, gives it back, you know. But the director, being an antagonist, he would write like the craziest stuff on the memo of the check, just to be a turd, you know, just to be. And I was like, man, normally ATM, Dropbox, like anything other than handing it to a person. But man, I desperately needed someone to agree with me that I was as bad as I thought I was. And I went to that bank and I slid the check across the counter and I locked eyes with her and I was waiting on you. It was like, not like look at me with disgust, shake your head. Please say something to me so I can do it. And I'm like, tears streaming down my face. Had ostracized myself from my family, friends, hadn't even talked to my mom, like calling me, texting me, never answer. Hadn't heard my name in over a year. No one even said Joshua in over a year. And then that bank teller didn't say anything, just deposited, didn't say a word. And then she came around the corner and put her hand on my shoulder and said, Joshua, are you okay?
Wow.
Joshua, can I help you?
She didn't know you.
No. I'd never like other than opening my account at this,
wow.
you know, at this Wachovia in Sherman Oaks, I hadn't, you know, and I ran straight and I called my mom and she cussed me out because she thought, you know, she was seeing that people like my roommates were dying, like people that I was having sex with, like unprotected sex with, dying of HIV, like I should be dead. And my mom just wanted to know if her son was okay, and I was robbing that from her because of my pride, because I was scared, you know. And
so this lady asked you if you're okay.
Yeah.
And it saved your life.
Yeah.
So think about that for a moment. I want to make sure, you know, I feel like you feel like this about the people who are in your podcast community. The Lights On crew, my favorite. They're the best in the world. But let it be known that if you have it on your heart,
yeah,
yeah, if you have it on your heart to encourage somebody, you got to do it.
Yeah.
No idea what they're going through.
Yeah.
Cost you nothing. Worst case, hey, you okay?
Yeah.
I'm fine. Worst case, nothing changed. Best case, you have no idea there is a Joshua Broome
Yeah.
on the other side
Yeah.
who will get to talk about the life you're living.
Yeah.
But who knows where you'd be without that lady?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the pills were lined up and the water was on the counter.
One interaction from a human to a human.
Yeah.
In your life continued another day, which gave God more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really moves me.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to find that lady and thank her.
Yeah. I went back there, the bank, like not only is she gone, the bank is gone. It's like
it was like, maybe it didn't exist.
Who knows?
I love stuff like that. God's that good.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that happens. I call my mom. She cusses me out.
Yeah.
And then after she said everything that she needed to say, she said, Joshua, I want you to know you'll always be my son.
Wow.
I never stop loving you. And as I've told you many times before, you are worth so much more than the life that you're living.
What's your mama's name?
Lynn.
Shout out to Lynn. Amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, and Kathy Lentz, she said the same thing to me in a tough spot. Like, I don't care. I love you.
Yeah.
So shout out to all the moms who have spoken life into their broken sons over the years. So moms, we love you. Unbelievable.
Yeah, man. So that happened, and then like literally, I get on the phone and I'm like, who will agree to take over my lease? You can have all my stuff. Like, you can have the sound system, the TVs, and I was like, I'm gonna pack my shoe. You can even have my J's. You know, I'm taking my Kobe's with me, but you can even have my J's.
Nobody gets the Kobe's.
Yeah, nobody's getting my Kobe collection. But I was like, that was pretty much. I packed up like my basketball shoes and left pretty much everything. I got someone to agree on a handshake to pay for my lease, which was like $4 racks a month. So like. But I left, and then I'm like, what am I going to do? The only thing I have in my back pocket to do anything, I got a level 1 CrossFit certification. That's all I got. So I called every gym in the area, and I found a gym in Raleigh, North Carolina that would hire me. And I moved to Raleigh, and I worked at that gym, but then I met this guy. Everybody calls him Doc. His name's Jason Davidson, but he was the strength conditioning coach for the Carolina Hurricanes, and he runs a Thor program at Fort Bragg, and he mentored me, and he started connecting me with people, just a galvanizer, and just cares, just like kind of like you before we started this. Like, man, how can I in what way can I serve you? Who can I introduce you to unleash more that's what in you, because I see something in you don't see in yourself. And he made some stuff happen, and then all of a sudden I found myself very successful and very respected in the strength conditioning space. Was working at a CrossFit gym that they were using CrossFit more as like a conditioning methodology, but we're working with Meredith and like SWAT teams and stuff, and all of a sudden like life looked pretty good again. And what I was trying to do, I honestly, is I thought, well, if I put enough good dirt on my bad dirt, I wouldn't look dirty.
Wow.
Because I couldn't
If I put enough good dirt on my bad dirt, I won't look dirty.
Because I didn't believe I could actually change. Yeah. So what I was trying to do is I was trying to manage people's perception of me. Yeah. And so if I thought I stacked the scale in one way, even though this stuff wouldn't go away, maybe I'd look a little better.
Decoy, almost like a decoy. Yeah. Look at this over here. Don't look at this.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, been there.
And then in the middle of that, this absolutely gorgeous girl walks into this gym, and she's decked out in Iowa cheerleading stuff. So obviously a cheerleader that cheered at Iowa. And I asked her on a date, and she's like, I'm good. And then like we would always hang out and throw parties, and like it was like tight knit community. But she would never come. She would just come to class and just kick everybody's butt, like in the workout. Like fittest girl there, super disciplined. But she wasn't about hanging out, and said no to me a bunch of times. Which what she didn't know enticed me, because I wasn't used to hearing no. So it's like, And one day she was like, well, we can go for a run. I do a long run before church on Sundays. I was like, sure, whatever. And I get there, and I'm like, man, like she doesn't know my story for sure. So it's like, I'll tell her, I'll do myself a favor. Like I wasn't trying to be a man of integrity. I'm like, man, I'm going to get burned. I might even get fired. So, if she quits the gym because we hang out and she finds out that, I used to be a porn star or whatever. So I was like, hey, I'm this kid that...
Are you a Jesus follower at this time?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely. I had bad intentions. Okay. I had nothing but bad intentions. But I was like, I just felt like this weird conviction. Almost I felt, man, my mom's voice in my head, which could have been a little bit of Holy Spirit saying, don't you dare hurt that girl. Don't you dare. And what that meant was, it's sometimes it's easy, it's easy to admit when you're caught, but like to be forthcoming, that's not easy. So I was just like, man, I need to tell. I was like, so like before we even took a stride, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna drop something on you. It's gonna be, it's gonna sting.
What did she say?
Well, I told her, I was like, man, I'm this kid that his daddy didn't want, and I've done a bunch of bad stuff, and a lot of the bad stuff that I've done, which is porn, is available on the internet for everyone to see, probably be there forever and ever, and there's a lot of it. And she was shook, and then all of a sudden, like after like a few, we walked for a little bit, and then I'm just kind of like, should I leave? Should I stay? Are you gonna throat punch me? Like, what's about to happen? And then all of a sudden her demeanor changed and she looked at me and got real serious. And she's like, I don't want to minimize the hurt that you probably feel or the shame that you probably felt when you told me that. I don't want to minimize any of that. But I need you to know that you're not defined by the worst thing you've ever done. And you won't be defined by the greatest thing you'll ever do.
Faith.
Yeah.
Lord Jesus.
And she's like, there's one author of you and it's not you. Do you know who God is? And I was like, maybe. I don't know. And she's like, well, I've been following Jesus since I was in the 7th grade, and he's the foundation from which I live my life. So what kind of food do you like? And I was like, what? Like, are you from like outer space? Like, didn't you hear what I just told you? Like, you still want to talk to me?
Wow.
And she just like walked and talked with me. And then, we walked and talked for like 2 hours, and she asked me questions I didn't know the answer to. She was asking me about SMART goals and stuff. She's an elementary school teacher. And I was just like, man, I don't know.
You're like sexy, measured.
Yeah. And I was like, man, I like, for me, like, I don't know anything about me,
Right.
If we're honest,
If we're all honest, we're learning about ourselves right now.
100%.
Yeah.
And so we walked and talked for a long time, and then text like maniacs all week. And then she invited me to church the next week. And I walk into Hope Community Church in Cary, North Carolina, and hear a sermon about...
No way.
Yeah.
Okay. This is crazy. So my roommate in college, his name's Brian Keeter, from Cary, North Carolina. Oh, and this whole conversation I've had Brian on my heart. So I'm going to call him. That's crazy. All morning I've been thinking about him.
Yeah.
That's insane. Continue. I'm sorry. I knew that this was going to happen with you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, man, I walk in there, and Mike Lee's the pastor at the time, and and I had a lot of, the church that I went to was like very, very, very Southern Baptist. Like, if you had a tattoo on your arm or a wrinkle in your shirt, you're going to hell.
We would have been in trouble, you and I.
Yeah. So it's like, this guy gets up in jeans and cowboy boots and tattoos and, like a puka shell necklace, it's like, I'm like, man, what's this guy going to say? And he starts preaching on 2 Samuel chapter 9. And like, I'm with him, and he like paints this picture of grace, and he shares the gospel, and it's like, man, that's amazing. Whoever that's for, Right. And then he hits 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 8, and he talks about Mephibosheth's response to David's grace. And Mephibosheth essentially, don't you know who I am? Don't you know who my daddy is? Don't you know my dad's Jonathan? Don't you know my grandfather Saul? Like, I was in Lodabar, like, hiding because, man, I deserve death.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I was like, yeah, me too. Dead dog, me. And then he read Hebrews 12:2, and it was like, man, there was something about like him talking about the joy that was set before him. And I was like, joy. If you said, fully God, fully man, fully perfect, omniscient, all-knowing. He knew joy, and then it hit me. He had joy in his heart because he had love in his heart for me. The Father that I always wanted and needed. And then all of a sudden I started getting pictures of every time I should be dead. And it was almost like he was standing in front of me. He was holding my hand. He was protecting me time after time after time after time. And just like his love just like washed over me. And I wept and I wept and I wept, and I stood up, and that was 10 years ago. And, that girl that was brave enough to say that, her name's Hope, which is pretty cool, but that's my wife. We've been married for 9 years, and we got 4 boys.
Shout out to Hope.
Yeah. It was wild. It's like the Trinity of Hope. Like, Hope pointed me to Hope at Hope Community Church,
So I love you, bro. You have such an infectious, supernatural grace. So I can't wait to see what God's going to keep doing with this. So you meet Jesus, and hope is in your life.
Yeah.
What on earth did you think you were going to do?
Yeah.
When you turn the corner, and then where you sit here today, I mean, there's nobody I love more speaking about, what you're now on,
because
of how powerful your testimony is. What what are you most passionate about right now as you sit here today? Because you've this is 10 years down the track. You're not a new guy showing up just trying out a faith. Yeah, like you went through the hard yards. Yeah, what's it been like repairing your brain? There's a question I have for you, because I have a disdain for people who use deliverance as a cheap, lazy alternative for someone getting real help. Like, I've been delivered from the spirit of porn. Yeah. Well, buddy, I'm not sure that makes any sense whatsoever. Right. Because I know my own story, and I know stories with other men. And I went to a rehab to figure out a whole bunch. And there were a lot of people in there dealing with sexual addictions. And it's so funny because you look around the circle and you're like, I thought I was the only one. It's called terminal uniqueness. Yeah. When you think it's just you. Yeah. And then you find out, oh, there's other people. And I left rehab going, I got a lot of work to do. Yeah. And so when I meet a man like you, I know what kind of work has gone in to you getting here. But what's that like? Because I'm sure it's a journey that's still ongoing. Oh, absolutely. So what was the damage to your mental health after how many years in the industry?
Almost 7 years.
7 years.
I would say even more so. Like the industry, but like I was living like I was in the porn industry
without being paid.
Without being paid for 20 years.
But you add all that in. Yeah. And then now you become a follower of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And you start to fix your how rocky was that road? Like even with hope, was it like, did you have huge setbacks? Did you have moments of just falling on your face, being like
Yeah. So I mean, regarding setbacks, absolutely. But what was unique about our story is, like, number one, like, Hope knew me for 5-6 days as not a follower of Jesus. Like she knew me as a coach, but we didn't have any kind of other, like, hey, your shoulders, your hips, and your ankles are linear when you're doing an overhead squat. Like, that was about the only conversation we had. But like for me, like, connection, intimacy, relationship, that all meant sex to me. And then with her, like, it just wasn't an option. So it's like, okay, so what do we do? And then, like, we kind of embark on, like, us dating, and like, what does dating look like? It's like, well, not what I thought it was. I mean, it was really sad for me, because what I realized, I did not even understand how to communicate to another person. I knew how to coach someone. I knew how to compliment someone. I knew how to elevate someone. But if I was honest, all those things were manipulation in some construct. We would call them hot conversations, so honest, open, transparent conversations. But he's like, man, I don't want you to just tell me, like, stupid stuff you're doing. I want you to tell me, like, what you were doing before you did the stupid thing, or what were you thinking before you did the thing.
I care about the thing. Let's talk about how we got there. That guy is smart, whoever he was. Yeah. Most low-level Christianity deals with the action. Yeah. Never the process.
Yeah. It's it's like, what did you see before you thought about doing this, and then what was the procedure or this? But it was like that was important. Did, like, serious counseling for 2 years, because, man, I was like, I thought that, like, I got freaking drugged and raped and thought, man, that was just another day in the office. It's like, because like, I mean, having sex with 1,000 people in, a 6-7 year period, and it just be, I mean, like, I'm serious, Carl, when I say this. Like, for me, if you walked up to me and fist bumped me, no big deal. If you walked up to me and looked me in the eye and shook my hand, it was terrifying. Wow. I can have sex in front of 5,000 people, no problem. Because that was something
that's your it was not you detached from it, but to look in your eyes got you. The phrase euphoric recall was what I was given in rehab, because one of my battles to overcome was, I remember asking my therapist, like, when am I going to get these images out of my brain? Because when you make mistakes, what people don't understand about sexual sin is the consequence. Long after you're forgiven, you got to deal with that consequence. And it's a lie to think that I'm always going to have these images. I thought that I was going to have to battle that the rest of my life. And I was so excited to find out that God can even redeem your memories. Because and my therapist gave me some tools, and I was able to talk to Laura about it. Because that's a question sometimes wives will have is like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah.
And if you don't have honesty in your marriage, you're going to lie right away. And there was a season where for me it was like, there are things that flash in my mind.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stick with the plan.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here today, looking at you eye to eye, going, man, that we crushed that.
Yeah.
And
but
what
I would
was
say,
that? For you, it's got to be a different level of that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, where it's like, there's some like, I love like Titus 2 talks about like that by saying no to ungodliness, you actually develop a hunger for righteousness, and you can change your palate. Romans 12:2, like you can renew your mind, but is it easy? No, I'll say it's almost like not to nerd out, but kind of like progressive overloading, like when you're strength training. It's like, man, you start at 10 sets of whatever at 60%. You end with, one set at 105%. Like it seems impossible when you get there, but when you get there, it's because you did the work. And without stress, there can't be change. So I think every time I would resist or every time I was quick to confess, it was like, man, I saw the girl on the stepper and I could have looked again. Or then that one look could have sent me to, look at porn. But I'm looking, I'm like, dude, the first thing I'm calling Andrew. I'm like, Andrew, I did it again, But there was something beautiful about just being brutally honest with my proclivities and saying, man, I'm messed up.
That's it.
I'm messed up. And but I like everything I've ever done is, man, 110%, And what I found is like, through like serving and just doing stuff that was contradictory to what I used to do, it's almost like it rooted it out. And just over time, like, I mean, there's moments of weakness where like something will pop in or I'll see something that's triggering to me. But it's like, man, the Bible will say, take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. But the practicality of that, it's like, man, confess it to a person. Because for me, it's like what seems to be unmentionable, it's the thing that owns you. When you think it's unmentionable, but once you say it, it loses its power over you. So I just became like absolutely obsessed, where it's like, man, there's a point in my life where like I wanted to be the greatest shooter in the world. So it's like I am
the greatest shooter.
Yeah. We'll see. We can we can go head to head. But but it's like, man, if I want to be a great shooter, I need critique. And I started craving constructive criticism, which I would say is it's a red flag if it feels abrasive, and it's a green flag if you crave it. Because, man, if I want to change, I want someone to see me, not the outward perception. I don't want you to just, because like your Instagram reels or whatever, it's like, man, these are highlights. I want you to truly see me and see all of me. It's like if I just show you the best angle or show you just when the ball's going in the hoop, and that's not helpful,
brother.
Yeah.
It's. Will you come back again? Because I'd like to talk to you a bunch. Yeah. And I think there's so many layers to this. Can you leave me with this? So I feel compelled to ask you this because this will not be the podcast where I try to give people fake loving support about pornography. Yeah. I'm not going to be that guy because from what I know, the men that I talk to, I've never met one guy who's like, I look at porn all day and I'm super pumped about it. Right. When I talk to men that struggle with closeted, shadowy porn habits, the amount of shame and defeat is palatable. Yeah. There's two guys on the podcast today can stand here and say that doesn't own us anymore. You at an even greater degree. If someone is watching today, man or woman, and they have a porn habit that has been a prison for them for years, and they've almost given up hope, can you speak to them for a second? Because here you are, my friend, filled with life, bright eyes, beautiful family, saved by the grace of God. Yeah. What do you say to that person who's like, I can't stop this?
Yeah, I would say, man, you can. You can. And the reality is, man, if you've placed your faith in Jesus Christ, Romans 8:1 says, therefore there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So guess what? You are not condemned. God does not love you any less because you watch porn. And if you understand, I love, Levi Lesko often says, if you know who you are, it doesn't matter who you're not.
It's beautiful.
So it's like, man, cling to what's most true about you. Yeah. And then also it's like, man, understand you're robbing yourself. So when I talk to NFL players, I'm like, man, should you have contributed to, and people you were supposed to protect, projects that you were supposed to create, people you were supposed to lead. Like, don't you want that? Of course you do. It's standing in the way.
The time robbery
Yeah.
of habits like porn is the silent killer.
Yeah. And
all the stuff you can see, that's real. But when you start, neurologic, we don't even have to, I can't even do it. I don't even want to start on the neurological front because I want to hear all that you have to know. So I need an on-pod commitment that Josh Broome will come back.
Let's ride.
We'll continue to, let me say this before we go. I'm proud to be your friend. I love watching what you're doing. Do not stop.
Yeah.
Keep shining, because it's men like you that are going to start cutting new ground. And there's a whole world out there who needs grace and teaching and love to get out of this clutch of the way we look at porn right now. And we're going to win that fight.
Yeah.
Because of men like you and because of women like your wife who have allowed you the time and the grace to grow and to be who you're becoming. It's just, it's powerful. So it's a real honor to have you on. And I know people are going to get great value from this, but you're loved, my brother.